afternoon, members. I'm Councillor Leo Madden, Chair of the Governance and Audit and Standards Committee. Could I just do a bit of housekeeping, make a few comments before we start? If the continuous fire alarm sounds, please evacuate the room and public gallery by the stair walls. Do not attempt to use the lifts. Please assemble at the turning circle at the end of King Henry Street, past the University's Park buildings. That's a change from the previous bit. In order to comply with the Guildhall Trust Fire Marshal regulations, if you signed into the Guildhall, please remember to sign out when you leave the building after today's meeting. COVID-19. Please be assured that we have put appropriate cleansing and social distancing measures in place to ensure that the meeting is undertaken in a COVID-secure manner. Limited public seating has been made available. However, this meeting has also been webcast to allow the public to attend remotely if they so wish. Can I please ask members to remain seated throughout the duration of the meeting, and you're advised to wear a face covering unless seated. Live web streaming. May I draw everyone's attention to the fact that this meeting will be live streamed and the camera zooms in to show the speaker. This is linked to the microphones. Therefore, can I please remind all attendees to turn their microphones on to speak and then off again once you have finished speaking. Members of the public are also permitted to record the meeting on the understanding that it neither disrupts the meeting nor records those stating explicitly that they do not wish to be recorded. Please be advised that the public sitting area is not in view of the camera used to webcast this meeting. So I'm going to ask for introductions now. I've already introduced myself as Councillor Madden. Can I, you're not a standing deputy? Okay. Can I start with Lee?
Good afternoon. Sorry, slightly late. Yeah, I'm Councillor Lee Hunt. I also happen to chair the Planning Committee, and there's sort of relevance to that this afternoon.
Are you declaring an interest?
No, it's not an interest, Chairman.
Hello, Councillor Stuart Brown.
Councillor Charlotte Gerarda.
Councillor John Smith.
Okay, could I particularly welcome Councillor John Smith to his first meeting, and I'm sure you'll find it extremely interesting as the rest of us do. We do have one apology for lateness, which is Councillor Weems, who hopes to be here about 3 o'clock. Okay, thank you. Item 2, declarations of interest. Any declarations of interest? No? Okay. Minutes of the meeting held on the 24th of September 2021. Okay. I'll go through them page by page for accuracy and matters arising. And we'll use the big page number. So page 7, page 8. If you look at 37 External Audit, the 2 bullet points there, testing of property, plant and equipment. You will have seen the email from David White from the External Audit telling us that that's ongoing. And on the residual work and pensions valuation, that has been completed. Any members, anything else on page 8? Page 9. Page 10. Page 11. Just in the second paragraph there about direct payments, that's still ongoing, I take it, Lizzie, but we will get a report at some stage.
That's correct, yes.
I don't want to lose it from the agenda, that's all. And page... Those are they agreed, members? Thank you very much, thank you. Okay, on to item 4. We've got Ian McGuire here, who's the Assistant Director of Planning and Economic Development, to speak to this. I do have a note here to say, this may be legalistic, I don't know. Can I remind members that the committee is not being asked to agree with the recommendations? The matter has been referred to this committee by the Cabinet member to debate the merits of the proposals and for comment, prior to the matter being considered by the Cabinet member. Ian, members will have read the report and taken great interest in it, but is there anything you want to add or anything you want to emphasise?
So, thank you. No, probably not much to add. So, of course, members have read the report. Obviously, the real key recommendations are 4.13 onwards, where the amendment that is being recommended to the portfolio holder is discussed. So, I would draw your attention to 4.13 through to around 4.16 as the key amendment to paragraph 57 of the scheme of delegation. Other than that, I believe it is relatively self-explanatory, but of course, happy to assist with any questions.
Okay, thank you, Ian. Members, any comments? Councillor Lee Hunt?
Yeah, so I'm sure Ms Maguire, I'm not sure if you were there, Ms Maguire, when I think it was the other, there's Ezzy and Simon were there, when this was raised at the planning committee, and members there were asked if they had any views, and everybody seemed quite content with it. No, there was no opposition, so that's a report from what happened there.
Can I assume, it's in 3.5 of the report, but can I assume that it was unanimous at the planning committee?
There wasn't a vote, it was a discussion at the end of the committee. Everybody who was there raised no objection and they acknowledged it, and there was no disapproval, no adverse comments.
Okay, thank you for that update. Thank you. Councillor Brown, I've seen first.
Thank you, Chair.
I've got you.
Ian, my understanding is that this is basically intended to help speed up the process by which applications are processed to get through the backlog, which is fantastic. Do you foresee any negative side effects if this is adopted?
So, through you, so the change is obviously to the thresholds which things come to committee to. There's only one substantive change, which is changing the number of objections. Overall, this will reduce the number of applications coming to committee, so that is a positive in terms of the throughput and efficiency. But there will be circumstances where previously a objector who wished to make a deputation as a sole objector had the right to bring it to committee automatically, and that will no longer be there. That individual may not be satisfied with that. The corollary of this is also a suggestion in here that objectors that don't want to make a direct deputation themselves, if there's 3 of them, can still get it to committee, so they will be happy for that otherwise wouldn't have achieved it. So pros and cons really depending on those individuals as they engage in different ways of making their views known through the representation and democratic process.
Okay, Stuart, thank you. Councillor Garada, Charlotte?
Thank you, Chair. Just really to back up what Councillor Hunt mentioned about planning committee, I consulted with Labour colleagues and they support these proposals as well, so thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hunt.
Yeah, just to safeguard, I think Ms Maguire can confirm that, even so, if a ward council member wanted to bring a particular item that was causing an issue, with only one person representing, he or she can use their power to bring it to the committee in any event. So, the democracy is still there.
Ian?
Yes, so all of these parts work separately, so we're making no proposed amendments to the ability of councillors, ward councillors or otherwise, to bring things forward to committee.
Councillor Smith?
How do you see the quantity of, how do you see it scope out in terms of improvement in planning applications? Do you how many? What's the increase you'll see by doing this in terms of speed, for want of a better word?
So obviously it's only a minority of cases that come to committee under the current system, so we've got to put it into that proportionality. A committee case takes about 4 weeks longer on average. That's what our systems review has identified than a non-committee case. So for all of those cases that don't have to go through this process, they will come through that much faster. A significant minority of cases on every agenda are for this paragraph 57 reason. So that does mean the agendas they won't be shortened of course, but things that are having to be delayed to later committees can come forward. So at the moment a significant minority of cases are having to wait longer to get decisions under this new proposal. The same sort of significant minority of cases will be able to get their decisions much faster on earlier, more open agendas. Okay,
Chair. Okay. Members, as the report says, we had a meeting in my capacity as chair. It was over the telephone, if I remember, Ian. back in August of 2020 when it was decided that the Planning Committee should sit again in the public arena, and we made some slight changes to the rules. Since then, or coming up to then, of course, we've had lots of people, and Councillor and I represent the same board, can tell you that we get developers contacting us saying that they haven't heard back for months from the Planning Committee. So there's a problem, you know, and I think this is what this is attempting to address, Ian. Is that correct?
Yes, as I say, there is a backlog of planning applications. One of the reasons for backlog is obviously the bottleneck of planning committee. There's only so many things the committee can consider in each sitting reasonably, and consequently this will make a small contribution to managing the throughput of applications through the council system to the benefit of obviously all participants in the planning process.
Thank you. Any other comments, members? Can we agree then? I can tell you that any issue raised during the debate has been recorded in the minutes and will be forwarded to the Cabinet member, which is Councillor Hugh Mason. Okay, thank you, members. We move on to item 5, please, which is the Internal Audit Performance Status Report to 18th of October 2021. Julian or Michael, whoever it is. Oh, no, sorry, it's Lizzie. Sorry, it's Friday afternoon. Lizzie.
I'm happy to pretend to be either Julian or Michael, although maybe not. Their areas are far too technical. Good afternoon, all. The progress report that is in front of you today, there has been a small amount of movement since the last reporting period, and that's simply due to time. You will note on page 31 that things are still progressing. The expectation is that we will clear all of our reviews that were determined at the beginning part of the year. You'll note on obviously the following pages that I have reduced the plan. There is quite a major sickness issue currently within the section, so there are a couple of areas that have come out. What will happen in relation to those areas is they will be reassessed for consideration for an inclusion in the 22-23 audit plan. So in front of you are a number of reviews that have been completed. They commence on page 36. I wasn't intending on going through in any particular detail, but I am more than happy to answer any questions that you may have in relation to those particular audits that are included in this report. So I'm happy, Chair, if that's okay, to hand back over to you for any particular questions.
Thank you, Lucy. Yeah, can I start on page 29? You highlight 4 audits that have been removed because of long-term sickness within your audit section, which I'm not unhappy with. But in the past, we've had sections asking for them not to be audited at a particular time for various reasons, which I've never been happy with. But I presume, Liz, these will reappear again.
Yes, Councillor Madden, they will be reassessed by myself at approximately Q4 of this year for consideration and inclusion in 22-23. Okay,
thank you. Could we move on to page 33? I'm not hogging this, members, but I'd like to get my bits out of the way. And the concern, Liz, the high exception one and the gas servicing. You know, we think it's a gas explosion in a property up in Nelson Ward recently. We were concerned that some of the buildings didn't have fire certificates some years back, which you highlighted to us, you know. So I don't think I'm happy to see delays in gas servicing, Liz. I mean, can this be speeded up in any way, or how will it manifest itself? And the same thing, I'll just do the Hive bit as well, it's the same page, Liz, about the legally executed MOU and a lack of formal minutes from the partnership. Is that, I know it's highlighted there, is that a big concern?
We've done an awful lot of work, if I start in reverse, in relation to Hive over the last 18 months, which is why we've highlighted it as being something that really does need to be put in place and needs to be put in place as soon as possible. And there are obviously plans in action to actually implement that. In relation to the gas services, I recognise the historic concerns, obviously, that there would have been and around, obviously, the fire risk assessments and so forth. The reason I've rated it as we have is because we're talking just over 2 weeks overdue, and this has been very much impacted on the ability to be able to gain access to premises during the COVID period. That has significantly influenced these particular results. Obviously, now that, I'm not saying in any capacity that COVID is parked and everything's resolved, because we all know that that's not the case, but access to the properties has obviously been regained, and the service themselves are prioritising. So I think they're doing all that they can do at present. We obviously need to see whether anything in the future again impacts on their ability to gain access. And fundamentally, it is that reason that has caused this issue.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Lucy. It's just that it seems to me that there has been, we had COVID and it's been on and off, but I thought there were more relaxations on it. They could allow engineers to go into our housing. But that's not correct?
In areas where the safeguarding, health and safety was an issue, yes, that was not dropped. This is standard checks and balances where gaining access to premises for the annual review was impacted upon by COVID, but if it was an emergency, they still maintained all activities.
Okay, Lucy, thank you. So that's my bit. Any questions or comments, members, on the paper? Anybody happy? Oh, sorry, Councillor Garrada. Could you state the page for me?
Thank you. On page 32, with the cash refunds, I just wondered how that was possible that refunds like that were taking place, even though obviously it's not a huge amount of money. But yeah, it'd be good to find out how that happened. And on page 33, with under gas services, I just wanted to double check if that was council housing and what type of tenure the properties were. And then just a question on the Hive beneath that about strategic objectives and how they weren't meeting them, and if you think there are measures in place to make sure that they do. Thank you.
If I can commence with the rent income ones, there would have been a cash credit, and if I can give assurances on the account to facilitate it. The problem that we had is that there should be a clear annotation as to why that is the case. It is a reasonably small amount, but obviously we need to make certain that everything sat underneath is correct. I'm satisfied there is good arrangements being put in place to resolve that moving forward. In relation then to the Hive, the strategic, the memorandum of understanding, which is a main particular one, there are again good arrangements in place and a number of actions that have already commenced with being implemented to resolve again that particular issue. I think, as I said previously, it's probably more of a concern around we have done a substantial piece of work with Hive, and it's really about getting our ducks in a row now moving forward so that it is clear and transparent. And I apologise, you had a third question, which was in the middle, and that was in relation to the gas services. Could you remind me what the question was?
It was just to double check what the tenure of the properties was, if it was council properties. Thank you.
Thank you. It was the one I meant to answer first, and then it eluded me. Yes, you're right, it would be council tenants.
Okay, members, thank you. Can we then note the audit performance for 21-22 to the 18th of October this year, and secondly, the highlighted areas of concern in relation to audits completed from the 21-22 audit plan, including follow-up work performed. Is that agreed, members? Thank you. Can we now move on to item 6, which is Julian and Michael? Thank you.
Thank you. For report sets out for Council's Treasury Management position as at for 30th of September. For report will be going on to the Cabinet and the Council, and it's brought to this committee for scrutiny. We've operated within the Treasury Management policy, and there's been no breaches of the policy in the first half of the year. We haven't undertaken any new borrowing. Unfortunately, investment returns remain low, currently 0.29%, in line with the low base rate. I'm happy to answer any questions.
I had lots of questions, Michael, but since the interest rate didn't go up, a lot of them have fallen by the wayside. So I can ask those at the next meeting when the interest rate will go up. But I just one question, Michael, sort of related to this. It's at the bottom of page 25, and it's the Public Works Board, and the interest that we have to pay back on that, is that good value for money as the years go on, Michael, up to I'm looking at the 5-year, 10-year, 25, or whatever, but is that seen as still good value for money for the Council?
The Public Works Board is generally competitive against the private market, and it represents value for money at the time loans are taken out.
Okay, thank you, Michael. Any questions, points, members? Are you okay? Thank you. Could we then note that the Council's Treasury Management activities have remained within the Treasury Management Policy 2021 in the period up to the 30th September 21, and 2, the actual Treasury Management indicators as at 30th September 2021 are set out in the Appendix A. Is that all right, members? Thank you. Thank you. Okay, can we move on to item 7, please, which is the decision to opt into the national scheme for auditor appointments managed by Public Sector Audit Appointments, PSAA, as the appointing person. Can I thank you for this? Because I think I got an email some months back, which I meant to send on to you and I didn't, so we got it back again. We see the rationale behind it, but is there anything anybody wants to add to it? Michael or Julian, since Chris isn't here.
Yeah, certainly. And in essence, for the next 5-year period, the Council has to choose whether to opt into the arrangements offered by Public Sector Audit Appointments Limited, which the vast majority of councils have over the previous 5-year period, all but a dozen or so councils. Our view is that it's best to opt into Public Sector Audit Appointments arrangements, because we feel that if we tried to appoint our own auditor, and we could under law go it alone, it would be likely to result in a higher price, and also there'd be, given that the number of actual people amongst the firms who have experience of auditing local authorities is pretty small at the moment. If we did go alone, we may also run the risk of actually having the procurement fail and not being able to appoint an auditor, which is really why we're recommending the Cabinet and Council to sign up to allow Public Sector Audit Appointments to appoint our external auditor, again similar to the process 5 years ago. And happy to answer any questions.
And as you're right to say, Michael, this goes on to Cabinet at the end of the month, I think, and then on to the December Council meeting.
That's correct.
So there's a good lead-in, isn't there? We're talking about October 23. What, if any, input do you think this committee will have?
Well, the role of this committee the decision has to be made by full council under law. The role of this committee really is to offer any scrutiny or ask any questions that it may see fit.
Okay, thank you, Michael, for that. Councillor Corrado.
Thank you, Chair. I was just curious as to what the price difference is, approximately.
Unfortunately, that's something we couldn't find out unless we went it alone, and then we'd find out afterwards when it was too late. But considering that the vast majority of local authorities use public sector audit appointments, the price difference would be likely to be significant, not least because the costs incurred by the firms doing the tendering for just one council or maybe a small group of councils is going to be higher, and those costs could be significant.
Okay, Charlotte. Okay, thank you. Okay, members? Thank you. Then I have to put a recommendation. I propose that the committee recommends that full council accepts public sector audit appointments, brackets PSAA, invitation to opt into the sector-led option for the appointment of external auditors to principal local government and police bodies for 5 financial years from 1st of April 2023. Oh, that's a mouthful. Is that agreed? Thank you. Which is compliance with gifts and hospitality register.
Hello, this is my report for the year to date from the 1st of October.
Didn't know where that voice is coming from, Peter, sorry. Yes.
I'm here now, Leo. This report covers 1st October 2020 to 30th September 2021. It's the Gifts and Hospitality report. It's got 2 sections, really. One relevant to officers and one relevant to members. In respect of disclosable gifts and or hospitality relevant to officers, there have been 86 this year. I have to say that having reviewed all of them, there's nothing of any terrible excitement there, save one that was refused for £340 relevant to a particular invitation. It shows a good level of rejection and a good level of usage of the policies relevant to giving, for example, to the Lord Mayor's charity relevant donations. And I would commend the report to you on the basis that there has been compliance with paragraph 4.3. Under the protocol, items under £25 of value and gifts under 40 of the valuable hospitality and £5 for social care. They must be given without ulterior motive, and there should not be any danger of misinterpretation. I'm satisfied that they were all dealt with in a proprietary way and a sensible way. So far as members are concerned, they are covered in a slightly different way, in the sense that gifts and hospitality for a single donor, paragraph 4.11, should not exceed £50 as set out in the members' code of conduct. Relevant to the members, I would take the panel to Appendix 6, which shows that there were 7 members who took advantage of the hospitality provided by the Victorious Music Festival to the extent of tickets in the value of £160. Now, I mentioned this for the sole reason that this is £960 as against the value of all the other declarations made in this report. The other reason I mention it is this: I've given specific advice to these members relevant to the fact that having accepted that and declared it means that relevant to future decisions and decisions relevant to that particular organisation, there is likely to be a personal and or potential prejudicial interest that would may or may not on that occasion preclude membership involvement in decision making relevant to that particular organisation. I want it clearly on the record that the advice was given by myself as City Solicitor and has now been ratified and reiterated at this committee today. I'm happy to take any further questions on that report. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Thank you very much, City Solicitor. There are some duplicates in the report itself, which you've probably noticed, and I like one to Jerry O'Brien, which was Advent calendars given in January of this year, I think. So obviously somebody had too many Advent calendars. That's an interesting point which hasn't come up before, perhaps because we haven't seen the amount of money, but members, sorry, could I just say the first thing on staff? I'm particularly not bothered about it because it does go through a proper process as to staff accepting it. I did fight for years when I was a cabinet member for adult social care, for people to take small gifts from residents, because where a lot of these say it would offend to refuse. It happens in those circumstances as well, but I have to say I lost the argument because what the director then wanted, and probably still is a no acceptance policy. Full stop. It makes it easier for everybody, I think. So that's the reason on that. But the acceptance then of and I have never accepted. In fact, since all this came in, I haven't accepted any at all because I never know what the value is. But certainly for these 7 members then, 7 it is, yeah, who accepted these gifts to Victorious, or these tickets to Victorious, what position would they be in if Victorious come up for renewal or whatever to a council meeting, Peter?
Chair, with the exception of licensing and the Deputy Chair for licensing, which I ordinarily grant an exeat to attend for the purposes of licensing consideration, all other members, including that particular member and potentially the Deputy, would be required to declare a potential personal interest that may or may not, depending on what the motion was before the committee or council or whatever, be potentially prejudicial. Yeah, because objectively speaking, members of the public might take a view, not unreasonably, that having accepted quite a large amount of gift from a particular event organiser, when you look at the policy and you look at the amount, that they may or may not have a potentially vested interest. So provided they made the declaration, the main problem from our perspective, I think, is that a number of members have effectively, having had advice, exited an ability to participate in any decisions relevant to that particular function again because of having accepted hospitality in the first place. So that cuts down the number of members that can functionally be involved in making decisions relevant to that particular organisation.
Yes, fair point. Yeah, thank you. Any questions, members? Any comments? Councillor Hunt.
Yeah, I've made it my own personal policy, similar to yours, to never accept anything at all, and I think that serves my role quite well. And I'm not criticising anybody for doing what they do, but I personally just think it's not for me.
I have to say, Councillor Hunt was at Victorious with his family and Ted. We know that.
Yes, indeed,
Yes.
and including the drinks prices, but I know why they were so expensive. I bought one round it was over £100, but...
with your money, Lee.
well, there's a lot of us, yeah.
I make no criticism of members at all. My observation is purely based on the idea of them functionally exiting their ability to make decisions relevant to that particular organisation from a governance and democratic point of view. Thank you.
Councillor Grady.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to say that I really commend the Council and the policy, because I think, you've hit the nail on the head. The policy is working, and, people have been really thoughtful and considered in terms of what they do and don't accept, and the policy is clearly working very well. So thank you.
Okay, members, so that's noted. I have to ask you whether or not you want to make any recommendations for any of the change. So nothing, so we're happy the way things are on that and report it back. And they are a full report, and I say I'm happy that they go through the proper process and go up the line. And in the absence of any changes, the report is noted. Okay, members? Okay, thank you very much. Can we go on to the old, for those who've been around for a while, it's the old chestnut. And this is Councillor Smith's fault, because he's new to the committee and we have to do this every time somebody comes on the committee. But Peter.
Thank you, Chair. This is my usual yearly request, twice this year, for disapplication of the political constitution of the filtering panel for members' conduct complaints. Now, what we traditionally do is disapply the position, and we look for cross-party representation as far as practically possible. The difficulty I have is getting a proportionate committee for the purposes of IFPs. That's not to say we don't aim for it, and that's not to say we don't get it sometimes. However, in order to make the filtering panel run in a reasonably sensible way on a normal basis, I'd ask you to disapply. By way of reassurance, I'd say to you, this is a decision I ask you probably every year, if not twice a year, so you get a good chance to have a look at it and consider whether you agree it or not. And if there was a political change, you might take a different view. But members, I'd invite you to accept that submission as being a practical response to a much-needed small panel of cohort to pick from. Thank you.
Yes, it's to widen the pool, really. That's all it's doing, to make sure we can deal with these as quickly as possible. Is that okay, members? Yeah, thank you. Councillor Ryan, a bit worried about you. All right sitting there? Do you want to move round? No, all right. You can see me. That's all about it. Okay. Recommendation on that, right? Can we move on to item 10, which is, where are we? Item 10 is exclusion of the press and the public. Now, this is only for the exempt reports and the orange papers that you have in front of you. So there is a white report, if you like, and then there's the orange papers themselves. So at this stage, I have to ask you to agree to move into exempt session only for the exempt ones. But we will discuss if there's any questions on the white paper, and then come back, go into exempt session if needs be on the orange papers. Okay, members, so can we agree to the exemption to exclusion of the press and public in relation to the orange papers on this report? Is that okay? Thank you. James, do you have to turn things off? Oh, we've got the white bit. Let's do the white bit. Okay. Okay, members. So item 9 then is oh no, I've done that for God's sake. Item 11 is procurement management. Now, Richard's here. Richard, do you want to address any of the issues on the white paper in front of us? Thank you. So this is Richard Locke. We've seen you. You've been here before, Richard, haven't you? Oh, you weren't here at the last meeting.
I wasn't at the last meeting. I was at the one before, though. Yeah, I was told that I didn't need to. Yes, physically.
Okay, Richard.
Yeah, I've been on the Teams meetings quite a few times before. So I'm Richard Locke, I'm the procurement manager at the council. I'll take you through a quick overview of the white paper. So we look at 3 main areas. It's spend compliance, which is contract entries that we have on the system, which indicates contracts that have been through a level of competition or off of a compliant framework, or they might have been subject to a waiver which should have been signed off either by head of service or above £100,000 would have been signed off by myself and colleagues in legal. I also have one that we go through which is around actual waiver exemptions and contract management. So the first part of the report is in respect to spend compliance, and we take that from our finance system, and we're now at a situation where we've got 91% of our purchase orders are now linked to contracts, which is quite dramatically up from where we were. It was about 71% about a year ago, and that's largely down to the Oracle Fusion project, which is making purchase orders have to be linked to contract entries. What I then do is I look at the raw figures, which you'll be able to see in the exempt report, and I consider whether or not actually they actually do fall underneath the public contract regulations, our own CPRs and transparency code, and any that don't I remove. Any which are obvious administrative areas I take out as well. And I also take out ones where we know it's been procured compliantly, but we just need to get a contract up on the system. That actually brings the compliance figure to 99%, which is well above the 95% target that's been agreed with committee. All the areas other than corporate services are above 95% individually. Corporate services are at 70%. Reviewing the information in the background, there's no areas that really cause any significant concern. All those contracts that haven't been linked to significantly below £100,000. So we need to do a bit of investigation, but we won't find anything which is going to put the authority at particular risk. One areas that we need to tighten up a bit on the spend reports is currently we get all of the information off of Oracle Fusion. What we need to also do is look into getting reports from our adult social care mosaic system and our children's social care systems as well. Once we have those, then we have a much better visibility of spend, but that's going to be the next period of development now that my team have moved off the Fusion project. Any questions on the spend aspect before we move on to the next part?
Richard, I have one, which is on page 87, and it's to do with the regeneration bit. What seemed, obviously, over the threshold, 822,000, jumped at me. But then a number of compliant procedures and waivers have been approved in relation to the supplier. What does that mean? Does that mean if somebody supplied us in the past, we give them a green light?
What's happened with this particular provider, it relates to the Property Investment Fund, and we went through a compliant exercise off of a framework agreement to source them for that bit of work. We've also been through a recent direct award for a framework agreement to source them for further bits of work as well. So it's a big number. Some of it might be non-compliant, but I need to investigate it further. Certainly some of it will be compliant, but I think it's all been lumped together under one purchase order. So we need to do some further investigation there.
Oh, so you'll come back on that one, Richard?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions from members on section 1? Okay, thank you. Section 2 then, Richard, if you would.
Okay, thank you.
If there's anything to say, sorry.
Section 2 is the report on the waivers in the last quarter. The waiver activity has fallen quite significantly. Certainly we have far less waivers that are linked to the pandemic or to Brexit that are coming through now. In respect of the waiver report, it's at 6 million, but actually £2 million of that was incorrectly allocated. So it's actually at £4 million. The waivers that are above threshold, so above our £100,000 threshold, there's one which is in relation to building works that are urgently required. So that there was a valid waiver exemption for that I personally approved, and we linked the rates to best value rates that have been previously competitively tendered. We just had to get that work done because otherwise residents' welfare could be at risk. The other waiver that was there as well was there's one to do with IT support, which we need critically as we move our systems into the cloud. We need to maintain support into the existing systems that we've got in place whilst we go through that change. So no significant concerns in respect of waivers, and certainly the numbers are going down significantly, and the numbers that were related to the pandemic have completely dropped off. Okay,
thank you, Richard. Thank you. Essentially, I like the bits where, a new broom, sweeping, cleaning, all that, Richard, that's you coming in, where some things were misclassified in the first place.
In respect of the waivers that were misclassified?
Support for Lennox Point and City Centre,
yeah.
And it appears that the contract entry had been misclassified.
Yes, so what happens is when people raise a contract entry on our contract management system in Tend, they will classify whether it's been subject to waiver or not, and sometimes the officer that is making that classification won't be aware that we actually procured it compliantly, whereas when I look on the file I can see that we've got a compliant record.
Well done, you're making our life a bit easier, I have to say, Richard. Thank you. Anything, members, on section 2?
Okay, so I move on to section 3, the contract. So section 3 concerns contract management activity.
Sorry, I've got it, yeah.
It's an area that I think it's quite open in the report we do need to improve upon. We need to get better visibility, and that's a big focus that we'll be doing over the rest of the financial year. In respect of the visibility that we do have, there was one red contract that was reported in the last quarter, where we're aware that there is work that's been put in place with the provider. Things seem to be improving, but we'll keep a close monitor on that. That was in relation to hygiene waste at the port. Another couple of amber contracts, both at the port, one in relation to building cleaning, which seems to be improving, and one in relation to security, again, which seems to be improving, but we'll tie in and keep an eye on that with the port. There's also quite a few on there, unfortunately, that have been misclassified, and when we go back to the contract managers they come back and say, actually, there isn't an issue, it shouldn't be showing us that score. So we need to do a bit of work, I think, to simplify the KPI scoring and effectively retrain people. So I think that there's a bit of work we need to do there because it seems to be causing a bit of confusion. The only other contract we had that had any level of concern was the apprenticeship training, which is down as an amber. It's probably a little bit of a harsh amber because I think the provider's actually delivering the specification. It's just that the provider's not being quite as flexible to a change that we would want them to be. So any questions on the KPI report?
I think that's my job.
Okay, sorry, apologies.
Any questions on section 3? Oh, please, Councillor Brown.
Thank you, Chair.
Could you mention the page, please? Just
Yes,
for me?
on page 91, looking at the contracts up to the end of September 2021, it says that almost one-third, 31.46, have no KPI scheduled. Does that mean that almost a third of the contracts that we have no way of measuring whether or not they're achieving what they're setting out to do?
Yes, that's the current position. We had a lot of contracts that were put on the register very quickly when we implemented Fusion. So we had to get the contracts up there because otherwise it was going to slow down financial transactions, purchase orders not being raised and services not being delivered. So a member of my team that was previously full-time on Fusion is now back into my team, and what we're going to be doing over this next, rest of the financial year is sweeping all of that up.
So those over 600 contracts would eventually then get KPIs and will be able to measure them at some point?
Yes, yeah, that's the key. And amongst those figures as well, there's quite a few contracts that need to be archived. So there's quite a few there that really have expired and there isn't a need to get the performance measures anymore. So that's a big thing that we're going to be looking to improve by the time we come back to committee.
Thank you. Okay. Oh, John, please.
Just ask what the timeline is when you'll get that done. So.
It's a relatively big bit of work, but I've got someone from my team that's now going to be able to focus on it, and we've just gone through to interview someone else today to provide support. So we could pull in some additional administrative support to go through and sweep through those records. What we'll be doing as well, though, is looking to relaunch the KPI system, because as you can see, it's causing some confusion. So rather than having 3 KPIs, we're just going to have 1 KPI, which is just 0 to 5. Because at the moment, it's causing confusion. People are putting them records in, and it's coming out of a result that doesn't necessarily represent their perception of the performance. So that's the 2 main things we're going to do.
Yeah, that was my second question, was around the training for the KPI. Is the training will make sure that you're getting the standard that you require from those companies, and that will...
Yeah, it's essentially what the KPI measure will do is it will be flexible and it will be able to be applied to any type of contract. At the moment, we've got, to say, 3 different KPIs, and we've got a multitude of different contracts from 25-year PFIs down to simple transactional supply contracts. So we're going to put something in place that can be very easily applied so that we don't then have to take officers through lots of complicated training to try and make it work. So that's the idea that we're working to.
Okay, Councillor Smith, thank you. Has anybody any points to raise on the orange exempt papers? I mean, a small bit. I had some things, but they're not of great importance. The world won't stop to me because I ask questions on it. But is that okay, members? So we can note that report. Ask you a question. Along with all of you, I did the training this year. A bit disappointed as ever, but because it concentrated on audit only. And I asked questions about it, because I don't know if members have training on complaints against members. I don't know, and I don't know if people also understood that, independent members, all the rest of it. And on procurement, I found it very difficult when I first started on this committee, and on what to look for. Would members, do you think should we do a bit of training on both those? And I would suggest that we do the training the same day as the next meeting. and maybe meet a bit earlier. Would that be possible? Say we meet at 1 o'clock and then start the meeting at 2:30, something like that. Could you do a sort of 45 minutes, Richard?
I could certainly give an overview. There's also...
That's the main thing, and the KPIs and how to come to them and how you revise them and that sort of thing. Yeah, sorry, Richard, go on, yeah.
Yes, certainly. There's also training that Local Government Association have got on their website, which is procurement training. It's directed at councillors. So what I'll do in advance is I'll have a look at that training as well, see if there's any good things there that we can bring through.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And Peter, complaints against members?
I can do that again, members get it when they arrive.
Oh, do you? Oh, you get it when you arrive?
I'll do it again.
I didn't get it this year.
You don't.
Oh, no, I came at 16, I didn't get it. Back again, that is. Okay, members, what do you think? Should we, I don't know, I think it's sometime in the new year, isn't it, James? Next meeting, sometime in February, January, I think. So could we, and it wouldn't do any harm, would it? But should we, would people be all right for training at 1 o'clock on the day? But that suit most people. Yeah, I'm thinking of you, right, yeah. And then maybe start the meeting at 2:30, just to give us a bit of leeway. Is that okay? So that'll be all right then. Can you note that, James, and I'll follow through then. So we've agreed item, whatever it was, item 11, 12, on procurement. Is that okay, members? Right, well, that's the end of the meeting. Thank you very much for coming, and I'll see you soon. Thank you.